So the hyper-rational saboteur could look like, um, well, I'll stick to the impact that the hyper-rational behavior and saboteur can have on others, because I liked what I heard you say, just brought up a lot of, I can see that, it just aligned so beautifully, which is why we've intertwined these two. And it's a beautiful way for people to see how, with coming from the lenses, how much ground there is to be able to work on these issues. But so with the hyper rational, they can be so focused that they come across as being intellectually arrogant because they pride themselves on their ability to think and think clearly and quickly and wade through masses of data and that kind of thing, that the impact that they have could be quite isolating to others whom they are consciously or unconsciously distancing because they're not measuring up, because they're too focused or they're impacted by emotions. And then they're really distracted by the fact that if they would just focus on just the numbers, then everything would be fine. And so there's so little room for that dance between the emotional element, the feelings of others, embracing ideas, dialing it back. That could be, I think you used the word abrasive too, but it could be more intellectually arrogant. It's a distancing on an intellectual level. And what happens is that when we have issues that have to do with emotions, the hyper-rational defaults into where they are strong. And so a lovely example that I heard, and I would love to share here, is that the creator of Hope, Positive Intelligence, talking about he inevitably coaches all of these executives and leaders. And so, they're inevitably, their marriages suck. There are problems in their marriages because they're analyzing the crap out of every single problem. And so you'd have these meetings and hear with somebody pouring their heart out, typically, and not exclusively, but typically it's the woman pouring their heart out and sharing all of the issues, and they're in this session and she's just being so honest. And then turn to the male and, okay, so what did you hear? What did you hear? How did you feel? Let's talk about this. And inevitably the hyper rational will go like, all right, well, there are 3 ways to actually solve that problem. Does not acknowledge the feelings, does not tap into that part of empathy, which is such a great connector. And so that's kind of a great illustration, I thought, of the hyper rational at work, where we take our intellectual power and just apply it across the board to every single thing, to data and to emotions. And it's a great discovery to actually embody when one could say rational is great for work and analytics, but not for relationships. And that could be leaders, that could be moms and dads, that could be spouses. So it's one of those things where with mental fitness, you get to the root causes. So whether you want to work with me for whatever it is in a business context or a life coaching, we are fundamentally looking at how are you showing up in the world and what impact is that having, not just for those around you, it's those root causes. So yes, thank you for giving me the opportunity to just kind of elaborate and share that a little bit. But I thought that was such a brilliant example of hyper-rational at work. I think it's a great illustration, and hope it landed with people. Yeah.
Well, I think, it's an example that I use, not that specific example, but with somebody who's not even in overextension, but highly logical, the opposite side is empathetic. And and some people have both, and which is a lovely thing about Lumina, that measures both. When you think of, though, a similar example, coming home from a bad day at work and your partner or friend is highly on the logical or rational side, and you're sharing about the day and they start saying, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that?
Oh,
And
yes.
you just want to be listened to. You just want to vent, right? So
Yeah,
very, very similar example.
indeed.
Um,
Indeed.
yeah, I think,
Indeed.
with somebody who's overextended, logical into that argumentative side,
Hmm.
um, they can can recognize that they're cut off from their feelings, um, and they can recognize that they ignore other people's feelings. So that's
Hmm.
the feeling schmeelings, just feeling out the door, as you said as well. Um,
Yeah.
it's there's some wonderful ways to return back to effective behavior that are available, and
Before you,
changing those thinking patterns.
yeah,
Mhm.
before you do that, you just reminded me of
Well,
one
I was going to
key
share them.
element. No, just one. Oh, okay. But just one key thing that I had forgotten to mention. It's and it maybe by inference people got it, but I want to articulate it. It's that emotional numbness. That is quite a characteristic of a person who has a strong hyper rational saboteur.
Mhm.
The tendency is to focus so much on data, numbers, and not let emotions interfere.
Mhm.
Um, that it's an actual emotional numbing. So
Mhm.
that's where if someone's going through and just realizing that they don't really, that you could start to recognize that that is not serving you. Because if you are so shut off emotionally
Mhm.
from colleagues and friends and family, then you're creating a buffer space. It's hard for people to connect and
Mhm.
communicate with someone whom their feeling is so numb. So I just wanted to
Mhm.
throw that in there because you said something about emotional numbness, and I forgot I had mentioned
Yeah.
to mention it earlier. But yes.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So I think, I just want people to really, um, I want to make sure that people truly get that the logical or the rational is helpful, right? It's in the hyper rational or in the overextension of logical, which is now kind of more on the argumentative side. My logic makes sense and my
Right.
logic is right. That's where it slips into ineffective. With Lumina, the when we measure logical, we're also measuring the opposite of empathetic, and people can be both. And then
Mhm.
there's some challenges with that too, because you can get pulled. Um, it's a bit of a paradox, but you can be both. It's in the overextension, and again in the hyper rational, where we can become disconnected and numb to other people's feelings or our own. So just wanting to make sure that people understand that we're not knocking
Right.
rational and logical
Good point. Good point. And you know what
when it
I
goes
think
to
would
the
be
extreme.
helpful? Right. And what I think would be helpful, LJ, and maybe we can just wind this down and wrap it up with this is let us know those three states that that Lumina Sparks measures this in, because we
Mm-hmm.
just started talking about overextended. But my PJ, I love to hear you say it. So tell us, just make it a little clearer as we, and then
Sure.
after that, you might just want to end us off with a quote. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then we can wind down this week's discussion. So
Sure. So with Lumina, there's 144 questions, and they measure the 24 qualities in 3 different states. And the first state is called underlying, which is the PJ state that Lark loves. So just who you are when you're with your closest friends and family, or you're by yourself. It's your private self. Uh, you don't have to think about how you're going to behave, right? And then every day when we're out and about, like Lark and I right now are in every day, we're thinking consciously about how we are presenting ourselves. Um, and that, that's by necessity. You're out and about, you have a work or a job to do, or a way that you need to behave. And it's a conscious choice. And then there's overextended, when it could be at home, it could be at work, it could be anywhere, where under pressure, under stress, those qualities generally become something that don't serve us.
Right. Excellent. Thank you for that. I just think it's important to bring the context to the conversation. Who may have missed it before. Maybe going forward, we'll make a point of leading with that in the beginning, so it's just clear for everyone. But I know everyone kind of inferred it and got it and whatever, but I just needed to hear you say PJ State. All right, so as we wind this down, wrap us up with a quote. I know you always come up with some lovely ones to end us off with, so please share one with us.
I think that I found two quotes, and they both really highlight the importance of left brain, right brain, right? The heart and the logic. So the first one is from Blaise Pascal. The heart has its reasons, which reason knows nothing of.
Love that one.
Love that one. And the next one is from Unknown, a very popular, well-known person named Unknown. Sometimes the most logical decision is wrong, simply because it fails to understand the complexity of human emotions. So I think that was both to re-ground us that rational logic is great. We need those emotions as well.
Indeed, indeed. And knowledge, wisdom, they both are awesome. You know, every problem does not need analytics. And I think if there's just one thing that comes out of this conversation this week, is that different problems require different strengths. And so we spoke about the overextended, we spoke about in the hijacked state, and how these strengths of ours can get overused and abused and no longer serve. But to reinforce what LJ said, it is highly desirable to be rational and to be logically strong. It is really a strength. In an overused and abused state, it is no longer a strength. It's no longer serving. So thank you for that, LJ. Another great conversation. I think we communicated everything that we wanted to in this particular week session. And I now invite people to listen, re-listen to this video, jot down notes. If you're looking at it on LinkedIn, put comments in there. LJ and I are continually checking the comments. Send us a DM if you have not gotten your question answered, or if you had a thought, send us a DM, right? I have no problem with people coming into my DMs as Methodist LJ. We look forward to that, actually. So please reach out, let us know what your thoughts are. And next Wednesday, we are having our weekly Wednesday chats. We've been doing them for about a year and a half at this point. And so that's where half an hour on LinkedIn at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll finalize the time, but just check our pages. We will have an audio room, and that's where we really invite you to come up onto stage and engage with us live. Ask us questions, share experiences with us, and we are always interested in hearing how people experience themselves in what we are speaking about. And this week it's the hyper-rational, or how have you navigated yourself and or someone else through a situation where there was an overextension or people were hijacked. What did you do? You know, these are the things we coach people on. We help you to preempt some of that. We help you to navigate through those situations when others around you are in those states. But we are also wanting to hear from everyone and learn from everyone, and have everyone just learn from each other, grow. So that's how we're gonna wind this up. Please join us next Wednesday on the Wednesday weekly chats on LinkedIn. We are beginning to post these videos on other platforms that we are active on. So maybe you'll see this on Facebook, maybe you might see this on TikTok or something. I have no idea, but it is anchored on LinkedIn. So drop us comments there. We are always checking. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And share the video if it really, really struck home.
Yeah, we look forward to hearing from people either through the comments or next week. Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, LJ.